So the bottom line is that Harvey Weinstein could be looking at up to 29 years. I don't think he's going to get that. And the reason I say he's not going to get that because he was convicted of the lesser crimes, right? But I can't predict what the judge is going to do. Who knows what the judge is going to say? I think with the Me Too movement being kind of a huge movement and with it having a lot of momentum, Harvey Weinstein could very much get the 29 years, right? So let me just talk, and I just want to say up front that, my channel, although I've covered a lot of sexual based crime lawsuit or civil lawsuits involving sexual abuse and things of that nature, my channel really isn't about sex crimes and sex lawsuits. My channel is really just about law. It just so happens that's what's been exciting. I'm hoping at some point I can move on to other exciting material. But for the most part, I think the only other thing that I had was exciting was the ASAP Rocky situation when he was in Sweden. So, the sex crimes at the moment with the Me Too movement is probably dominating my channel, right? So the other thing I want to say is that I think the Me Too movement is a legitimate movement. And I think women in general have been oppressed for a very long time. And it's time for them to, I guess, escape, the bondages of oppression. And I think the Me Too movement is legitimate and it's something that we should all take seriously. I do think it's kind of a tricky situation because there are some situations where I believe people are just making crazy allegations just to get a check. So obviously in those situations, I'm not going to support it. I'm actually going to speak out against it, which I've already done on some of the videos on my channel. You can go and see those videos. And I also want to say that my channel is not about bashing people who are victims of sexual abuse and sex crimes and so on and so forth. You would hope that if you're sexually abused, that people will believe you, and that's what the Me Too movement is all about. So that's it for that. So let's just talk about where we go from here. So you have Bill Cosby being convicted. You have Harvey Weinstein being convicted. You have R. Kelly pending trial. His trial is coming up pretty soon. You also have Damon Dash. I think there's a civil lawsuit against Damon Dash. And you also have Cuban Gooding Jr., right? Cuban Gooding Jr. is going to start his trial sometime soon. Maybe I'll do a follow up video on that just to recap and see where we at. And we also have Run DMC, Russell Simmons. Russell Simmons, Run DMC, he may not actually have a trial, but as you know, Oprah was working with some production company to do a film about the sexual abuse that Russell Simmons is allegedly responsible for. Um, there's three women that claim that they were raped by Russell Simmons. I have that video on my channel. You can check it out. And I think I called it Oprah Pulls Out of the Russell Simmons Lynching. So, with all of this stuff going on, I think we really have to acknowledge the Me Too movement and just ask ourselves, where do we go from here? Right? So, I believe that everything has totally changed. I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, and I think the things that were permissible then are totally unacceptable now. I'm not going to go into detail about what those things are, but I will say that it was common back then, and even now, it's common to go to bars or to try to meet someone on Tinder and then try to take them out for a drink and basically try to take them home. So that's something that has definitely going to change because when you do that as a man, you're putting yourself at risk. You're putting yourself in a situation where a woman can actually come out and say, I was raped. I was too drunk to consent, and he had sex with me knowing I was too drunk to consent. So you have to understand that that's a really strong possibility now, because although they're going after these big time producers and the movers and the shakers, I think where we go from here is that we're going to start to see criminal sexual abuse charges filed against average everyday people more often than not. And the reason I say it that way is because I'm pretty sure, actually, I know someone who actually got a criminal sexual abuse charge against them. Maybe I'll, put that story out there. But I would say those charges are few and far in between. And I think now they're going to become more prevalent. Just a simple thing as going to a bar, meeting a beautiful lady, buying drinks, and with hopes of taking her home can basically put you on track to, be locked up for half your life, if not all of your life, right? So because of that, I think men have to adapt. You really have to adapt. And it's going to be interesting to see how things develop. Will people start to have will guys start to have women sign non-disclosure, not non-disclosure agreements, because non-disclosure is basically saying that you won't tell some private activity or something of that nature, but it doesn't mean you can't be taken to, criminal court. But I think men are now going to have women sign a non-prosecute agreement. I think there's another name for that, and it probably has different names in different jurisdictions. But when men are going to have women sign release of liability. That's what it is. You're going to have a woman to sign a release of liability, right? So yeah, so now you're going to have to get a release of liability from women, and you're basically going to have to, uh, get them to explicitly say, I want to have sex, and not only do you have to get them to explicitly say that they want to have sex, but you're also probably going to have to list the explicit details of the types of sexual activities that you're actually going to do and what you're not going to do, because this thing can get pretty deep. I think I searched Google for this type of thing, and I think the closest thing that comes to this are agreements for BDSM. Basically BDSM is, I think it means bondage, slaves, massacre, or whatever. But basically, those people have agreements because there's always a chance that you could potentially do something which the person didn't agree to. Of course, you agreed to this type of activity, but if you slip up and you do something specific that they didn't agree to, then you could still be sued in a civil court, right? Or if you violate that agreement, you can still be sued. So I think moving forward, where do we go from here? I think where we're going is really complicated sexual relationships. I think there's basically two types of people out there. At least I'm going to say there's two type of peoples. I'm just going to oversimplify it. Basically, you have people out there who are saving themselves for marriage, and they're never going to have sex outside of marriage. In my opinion, I have not seen many of those people. And then they exist. There's just not that many of them. And then you have people out there who are having casual sex and just living life to the fullest, right? So for the people who are having casual sex and living life to the fullest, specifically men, you're going to have to get women to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I'm sorry, a release of liability agreement, saying that they won't prosecute you, for having sex. And it's crazy to think that you have to get a person to sign that, just so that, you guys can go out and have a nice time. But I think that's where we're coming to. Leave your questions, comments below. Let me know if you think that's where we're going. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this. And I think the release of liability is probably also going to apply to women who have a lot of money, who date men, and it's also going to apply to women who are in position of power. You may not be a millionaire or a billionaire, but you could be a woman who decides to date a guy on the job, and he could be working under you. I have so much in this video that I want to talk about, but I don't want this video to go too long. So let's say in the next video we're going to talk about positions of power in dating, and what dating people who are in a position of authority. So we'll talk about that in the next video. Send you then. I'll end this video, but leave your comments below. Let me know if you think both men and women are going to have each other sign a release of liability form or contract in order to have sex. I think that's where we're going to. Let me hear what your thoughts and questions and concerns are about that. Thanks for watching. Share, like, and subscribe.